Before we begin, thank you very much to Maximal Grimlock for joining the Patreon campaign. Very appreciated. Thank you so much for the support. Every little bit of support helps, whether you are pitching in $1 a month, which is the lowest I ask for, because that's the easiest for everyone to afford, but also just hitting like, hitting subscribe. Helps me out a lot too. Attacks that pesky algorithm that doesn't want me to succeed. So we need to show it who's boss, right? Also, just a quick plug, just a quick reminder, you'll see below, I do have my Entertainment Earth link. Remember, if you need any of your toys pre-ordered, I do appreciate you pre-ordering using my link. It does help out the channel a lot. And if you're ordering something that's in stock, my code gets you 10% off of everything. So there you go. So you get a deal. I get a little bit of support. You get the toys you want. Everyone wins. Let's talk about toys, shall we? Because that's what we usually do here on this channel. So I was reminded today that this boy, Medix, is actually getting his release. He's actually been sighted in the world. Not in the US yet. He's probably going to be a Walgreens exclusive here, and then thusly a real annoying figure to get a hold of, like all of them are. However, it did put me in the mindset of, what if we did that with everything in Rescue Bots? So I thought to myself, let's put myself up to a previous challenge, and we will do so again. We will create an entire toy line, but except this time, I am constraining myself only to Rescue Bots and Rescue Bots Academy to come up with the entire series. We've done this before just with like obscure characters that I want new toys of, or like a wave that I would create, but here we're going to try to balance it out a little bit more and see what exactly it would look like if they went all Rescue Bots with modern toys. Because to this point, only 2, to my knowledge, have gotten the real upgrade, Medix and Blur, and really there's some really cool designs in Rescue Bots that really deserve it. Also, a whole generation of fans identify with those characters as their very first Transformers. I think it's fair that as they grow up, new versions that are more challenging and more complex become available to them. That's how it worked for all of us, right? So yeah, let's actually go about this. Now, we're starting with the core class and work our way up, and this is very difficult because most Rescue Bots are depicted at the same size. So core, Commander, Titan, not the easiest things to come up with. A lot of these are going to be decided based on the vehicle they turn into and how big it would have to be to actually suitably depict their real world counterpart. But I've decided with the core class, I'm going to do the Studio Series approach, where it's a mix of minor, small characters that should get a toy, but also, but that would be normally tiny. And then a couple that are just thrown in just so, there's an inexpensive version of the character around. So in this case, we're going to start with Brushfire. Probably the only Rescue Bot that transforms into something particularly small as an ATV. I like the design. I like the name. So it absolutely goes in the line. Also, core class is really the only size class you could put the character in. So that's the start. That's how we start this, right? So nice and simple. No real long explanation needed. Hopefully we'll get out of this video in under 20 minutes for once. If we're going to continue the core class, though, I have to get creative, which means we'll throw in a Bumblebee. So, again, just like Studio Series core class, it's a major character in a small, affordable size for kids, very simple figure, but hearkening more to the Rescue Bot's design, with the windshield on the chest pointed upward and the top of the car being the belly. So, it's going to feel like a very different Bumblebee, even though this would technically be, like a generation style one. Just to keep in mind, this is not just like rehashing like previous figures. We're talking all new molds here. So this would be a completely fresh Bumblebee that, they could retool a million times down the line, because a lot of Rescue Bots kind of were designed the same. Similarly, we're going to put Optimus Prime in core class as well. So I figured that they're important to Rescue Bots, but they don't need to be part of the main series. So this incorporates them pretty well without really getting them like too much of a spotlight. So they're at least represented and recognized. Also, we might be seeing one of them later on this list. So hold on. So the bracket calls for 4 core class figures, but You know, I can't throw the main cast of Rescue Bots. There's no other ones that we can pull from like major Transformers from Prime that were actually like depicted as like Rescue Bot style characters. And we can't really go about anything else that's small. Brushfire is really the only one. So we have to go with one that didn't get a toy, and one that I actually really like from Academy, and that's Laserbeak. I love that Prime Laserbeak, the drone of Soundwave, ends up evolving into a character who would join the Autobots just out of friendship if they didn't feel so bad about being a Decepticon. To the point where even Optimus acknowledges this and officially grants Laserbeak the faction switch. There's an Autobot Laserbeak in the world, and I think it deserves to have a toy. Just a little core class, you know, just so we can, like, check the box, because it's a very unique depiction of Laserbeak. All right, let's move up to Deluxe class, and this is where we get some really obvious choices. Chase, I think, is a very apparent choice to be in the Deluxe class. We're going to move up to just normal-sized cars and vehicles and such, and Chase seems to fit the bill right there. The nice thing here is that you can't make this out of any kind of Prowl or any kind of existing police car transformer. Gotta be a new mold. A lot of these Rescue Bots have to be a new mold. Keep in mind, we're not keeping like the normal like Rescue Bots like super deformed aesthetic in the toy line. We're going with, you know, the same way Medics was upgraded into a Generations more G1-ish style. So we would take this as a base and then, you know, improve upon it, sleek it down, like shore it up so it looks more like a modern like collector's interpretation of the character. Again, so it's a more advanced version of what a lot of kids grew up with. That seems cool to me. We're also going to put Blades in this line. Blades was almost a Voyager in my head, but he is a like a mono-seat helicopter, which is far more on the small side, especially when you include the fact that a lot of that bulk, a lot of that like size on a small like 1 or 2 seater helicopter is mostly in the tail, which is not going to create a whole lot of bulk here. So I think Deluxe is the appropriate size for Blades. You'll see why when we get to Voyager. Moving on, we have Hoist. So this one would be larger size Deluxe, I will admit, to be appropriately sized, but I think it works. I do think it works. A lot of tow trucks end up there. This is another one that almost ended up in Voyager, but I couldn't quite justify it. A lot of times it just comes down to like me looking at the vehicle mode, seeing how big the windshield is, imagining a driver inside and thinking, okay, that would actually be a little bit smaller than it looks. Oh, this would actually be a little bit larger than it looks. So I think that's about as big as I could get away with on Hoist. Moving on, here's a Rescue Bot character that kind of threw everyone off because it's surprisingly cool for a kid's line. And also in voice casting too. So let's do Quick Shadow, who even in the Rescue Bot line actually does stand out a lot. Far more traditional Transformer in overall design, and just a really cool female character that we really haven't gotten to touch on since. It's kind of a shame. In the show, I can't remember the actress's name offhand. You'll excuse me, as I certainly not quickly rushing to TF Wiki where all these pages are still open and I could, you know, quickly look it up. I can't quickly look it up. I can't quickly look it up. Alex Kingston. That's the actress for River Song from Doctor Who. And I think everyone kind of lost their minds a little bit when they found out a Doctor Who alumni was going to be a Transformer character. Maybe not like a Dwayne The Rock Johnson is a Transformer kind of like earth-shattering, but still really cool. Still really cool. And Quick Shadow's a cool character. Would love to see a modern figure of her. We need villains. The hard part in Rescue Bots is literally every toy is a good guy. Literally, just like almost like 99% of Rescue Bot toys are Autobots. There is only one exception. The one exception that I can think of offhand, and we need something. We need someone for them to beat up, and that's where Morbot comes in hand. I do really like the design on Morbot. I mean, it's a cool kind of generic troop builder-ish design. The F1 car, I think, really works as like being the villainous vehicle of the whole set. I think you might have to upgrade his status to Decepticon if you're gonna, you know, put him as like the sole like villainous, like, you know, like evil aligned character here, but it really is the only option we got. It's the only option we got, so we got to include it in the line. I'm sorry, I don't make the rules, even though it's my video, and I absolutely do. Let's move on to the Voyager class. We got 4 Voyagers to talk about, and if you've been following our patterns here, you can probably guess who they are. So the first one's got to be Boulder, because here again, if you imagine someone just driving that cockpit, that's going to be a really, really big vehicle. So I think it works best as Voyager. A lot of construction vehicle transformers end up at that size class, and it's the kind of thing that even kids would want to be a larger toy, because they want a big, powerful looking machine out of a construction vehicle. So yeah, he ends up in a very traditional spot for Transformers, being a green construction vehicle at the Voyager size. Yeah, we got a whole box of those once upon a time. So, moving on, and here's one where, yeah, we could have flipped this with the other helicopter, but I want to give the nod to Whirl. 2 reasons. Number 1, I love Girl Whirl. I mean, I think she's my favorite out of the rescue bots. Admittedly, I don't have much experience watching the show, but I really do like her. I like her design a lot. I love the idea that, like, this depiction was put out there at the same time as, like the psychotic one from the IDW books. Like, that's actually kind of hilarious. So yeah, I just really like the design. I bump her up to Voyager because her attack helicopter here, well, it's a rescue helicopter, but it's patterned more like an attack helicopter. It would be a fair bit larger than Blades. So I'm giving her the nod above him, even though admittedly he's probably the one that would, you know, suit the price point best character-wise. I'm playing favorites here. You know, I make the rules. All right. Moving on, another one who ends up in this Voyager class slot a lot is an ambulance, so we're going to do our own version of medics. Not the one that's just a retool. No, we would do a completely new one, because, like, this is a really buff ambulance. This is the first toy that that medics had, and these, like most rescue bots, they had a ton with different vehicle modes, but this was the number 1, and it's a really heavy-looking emergency vehicle. Way heavier than the one that he's actually getting, which doesn't really look like an emergency vehicle, to be honest. It doesn't look like anyone's going to fit in the back if they have to go to the hospital. So this one, again, by virtue of having a very small windshield, makes me think very large vehicle. And ambulances are large vehicles, so this is where it's suited. For the last Voyager, this one's going to conflict a little bit, so maybe save this one for like a later wave, like wave 3, I think this would be. And that would be Wedge. Again, a vehicle that really does have to be like a big snowplow, definitely has to be a larger size on a Transformer scale. And it's going to clash a little bit with Boulder at that size. And that's kind of a weird thing. I mean, knowing modern Hasbro, wouldn't be surprised if this was a real thing, that they would be actual retools of each other, just with a little bit of kibble rearranged so that, you know, like the front scoops on both could either be the feet on one or the hands on the other. Might be a tricky engineering thing, but we've seen weirder out of Hasbro. Let's be honest here. But yeah, I mean, just due to the size of the vehicle, can't be anything but Voyager class. You're noticing there's a mission here. Don't worry, we got you. We got you. We got to move up to the leader class to get there. But first, we're going to take a look at another one that's just like probably about only gets this way because big, and that would be Salvage, who is not only packing a gigantic vehicle mode, but also a very buff, big robot mode. And this is another one where, admittedly, character-wise, probably does not deserve to be at a $55 price point. That might be a bit of a risk, but honestly, it's the depiction of the character's too big to do otherwise. You couldn't get away with putting him any smaller than this. And I'd love him to be big enough to where you can actually use the rear of that garbage truck mode to dump a few smaller figures into. You know, just for fun. But I think the obvious omission to this point, and the one that really does need to come up next, is going to be Heatwave. Of course, like the leader of the first Rescue Bots cast, and one of the mentors from Academy. you got to have him as a prominent figure, and I would be happy to see him at the leader class. The problem with a lot of fire truck Transformers is that they end up in the Voyager scale, when that makes them look so diminutive, like next to a deluxe car. Like Inferno looks great in robot mode next to everybody. In vehicle mode, he looks like a kid's vehicle. So big, big leader class size fire truck, get at least somewhat close to the proper scale for the vehicle. And yeah, Heatwave, one of the more major characters, one of the more popular characters, absolutely has to be in that prominent spot. Here's once again where we get a little bit weird, because once again, Rescue Bots depicts everybody roughly the same size. So who do you do for Commander class? Again, we got to be a little bit creative. And I got to go with one that I've always really liked. It's a super bizarre toy, super bizarre idea, but that's what Rescue Bots was great at. How about a Commander class Optimus Primal? And by Primal, I mean Optimus Prime as a frickin' T-Rex. I love this design. Like, I was not a Rescue Bot collector. I would never really follow the show while it was on. I still almost went for this just because it's so ludicrous and just like it looks like just like a really weird, fun idea. To see it in full size with like the articulation in the T-Rex mode to really like set it off. To see Optimus Prime in like a much more complex, almost Kingdom Megatron style transformation, just more like chunky and solid. And I think this would be fun. I think this would be fun. It's a bizarre one. It is, but hey, that's what Rescue Bots does, so I think it's appropriate to respect that and show off one of the weirder ideas they came up with. And yeah, I think you could have a lot of fun with this at the big size. And that leaves us with the Titan, which might be the hardest one of all, except for the fact there is literally only one Rescue Bots character that could work with this, and that's High Tide. Seen here in the giant salvage boat mode. Yeah, this is depicted as like literally the biggest character in Rescue Bots. Like, there's really nothing else you can do. If we're going to go Titan for this series, it's literally your only option. And yeah, I mean, it creates a very appropriate sized character. And if you want the smaller versions of the character depicted in, you can run something similar to like the Ark, where like the smaller version of High Tide is built in somewhere that can be like taken off and used independently. And of course, a Titan needs action features like that. So yeah, it works. It absolutely works. And that, my friends, is going to be the Rescue Bots line. Now, I like the fact that this format has enough slots to not only fit the entirety of the Rescue Bots and the Rescue Bots Academy main cast, but enough slots to also fit in a couple of the mentors, a couple of the deserving side characters, and yes, there's just enough in Rescue Bots lore and toys to fill everything else out. I mean, honestly, this looks like a really balanced wave to me, aside from the fact that there's only one bad guy. But, beyond that, I think this is about as good as it could get. But feel free to disagree in the comments below. I never know if you're going to or not, so let me know, and I will see you next time.
I'm like, I think you guys got this. I will back away, and I will see you all later.
You've got this handled.
Alafi's like, really? You're not gonna help me? Like, it's fine now.
It's like these disgusting creatures breathing down my neck, and you're all just like, I believe in you. You got this.
All right, you seem to have this. 5 minutes.